in the West Coast, one would say that was Mexican American. The Hispanics were Mexican Americans. In New Mexico and southern Colorado, that group of Spanish-speaking people called themselves Spanish Americans because they traced their ancestors to the 16th century. And that was a very special group, and it's reflected in the fact that they rise to national political prominence before any other Hispanic group. The third area of Hispanic population was roughly Texas, and that would be Mexican American. And then South Florida was already, since the war, Cuban. It wasn't as large a community, of course, as we now have, but it was substantial enough. I mean, even I remember as a kid traveling with my mother to New York, we stopped in Miami. On the way to New York, we stayed overnight in a hotel, and it was distinctly Cuban. And then in the Northeast were the Puerto Ricans. But the Puerto Ricans were not numerous at all until immediately after the war, whereupon there was this enormous migration of Puerto Ricans from the island to New York, so that politically and socially, if you spoke of Hispanics and you were talking about New York, you were really talking about Puerto Ricans. So much so that those who were not Puerto Rican themselves would affiliate in various groups. As it were, they were absorbed into in what was the Puerto Rican community, and that was the Hispanic community. The visibility of the Hispanic community in every one of these places is captured by their rise in prominence in public life. So it is not a coincidence that the Spanish Americans of New Mexico had had a United States senator since well before the Second World War, and that was Dennis Chavez. The Montoyas were another family from New Mexico, and when Chavez is in the Senate, I think there was a Montoya in the House. They had only 1 or 2 seats. So you see, at that point, in that part of the country, the Hispanics were quite influential and visible. It's not until the 1960s that the Hispanics become visible in the civic and political life of these regions. And that symbolically, for me, is represented in California, and this is all around 1960, and connected in part to the ascendancy of JFK, but not because of JFK, but it coincides. And so you have Edward Roybal, Roybal, is the first Hispanic, in this case, of course, Mexican American, elected to Congress since, I think, the 1850s or 60s. Roybal. And then in Texas, same time, roughly the same time, you have the first Hispanic, in this case Mexican, Hispanic elected to the House, and that is Gonzalez of San Antonio, who would be in the House until 30 years later. He became chairman of the Banking Committee. And that was it.